Hi, very lovely booktubers. I'm Debs. Welcome back to my channel, Raina Reads Stuff. I am in the book shack. It's not too hot. Weather's cooled down a bit. We've had a bit of a heat wave. In a couple of days' time, it's the end of June. I can't believe half the year's gone already. But that also means it's the end of quarter 2 of Historathon. And we move on to quarter 3. Now, if you don't know what Historathon is, you ought to. It's a really good year-long book challenge to read nonfiction history, and the year is divided into 4 quarters. One of those, it starts with prehistory to 500 CE. We're just finishing 500 to 1500 CE. We move on in July, August and September to 1500 to 1820. And I believe it runs till 1820 to tie in with Jane Austen July. And then we have the final quarter, the last 3 months of the year, is 1820 to the present day. This is organised annually by Vin at Revenant Reads, and there are a whole load of co-hosts who I will list below, of whom I am one, and I'm very proud of that fact. So, my plan today was to go through everything I've read for quarter 2 and then go through my pile of possibilities for quarter 3. And I started getting all the books out and I couldn't fit the camera on the desk. So I thought I would split these into 2 and we will have a pile of possibilities for quarter 3 today. And I will do the wrap up for quarter 2 probably at the end of next week. So, I've got a lot of books to show you. We'll start. There are 2 books that I am reading all year. One of those is the favourite book of reportage, and this is witness accounts of major events in history. I have read the ones that are relevant to the first 2 quarters for our Historathon timeline. So, for the 3rd quarter, 1500 to 1820, this starts with Amerigo Vespucci on the New World in 1502, and we go up to Peterloo in August 1819, and that one is written by Sam Bamford. That gives me a couple of 100 pages to read of this. You can see it's quite heavily weighted towards later events. The other one I have is the Penguin Book of Historic Speeches, and I'm doing exactly the same thing with this. So for quarter 3, this begins with a speech by Thomas Cranmer, made in 1556. And we go up to Daniel Webster, who is speaking in 1820. Again, that's a couple of 100 pages. I am currently there in the book. It's probably going to leave me with the vast chunks of both books to read in the 4th quarter. Now, I also have a few books that I'm planning to read over 2 quarters. For those of you who don't know, this month has been June on the Range, where people read westerns. I only discovered last year that I love westerns, and so I've read a few of those. And whilst browsing the charity shop, our local second-hand bookshop, I came across this, The Oxford History of the American West. It's a bit of a chunky monkey. It is edited by Clyde A. Milner, Clyde A. Milner II, actually, Carol A. Connor and Martha A. Sandweiss, and it was published in 1994. It cost me £2 of the realm, so I couldn't resist buying it. And I'm thinking that over the next 6 months, I ought to be able to get through that. And these two, which I've already started. So 500 Nations, An Illustrated History of the North American Indians by Alvin M. Josephy Jr. Um, I'm loving this, mainly because one of my non-booktube hobbies is photography, and these have some fabulous images in them. Social history images. Of course, can't find any now. Things like that, which I just think are amazing. So I haven't read that far. I've probably read about a fifth of it so far, but I am enjoying it, as I am also enjoying this, The Mammoth Book of Native Americans. This is edited by Johnny Lewis, and it's the story of America's original inhabitants in all its beauty, magic, truth, and tragedy. Again, very interesting. I think those over the next 6 months will be fascinating. Right, let's start with my physical pile of possibilities, and I'm not sure this is in any order whatsoever. A lot of these I've picked up in second-hand shops along the way. This, Celia Fines, The Illustrated Journeys of Celia Fines from 1685 to 1712. It's an account of her journeys around England, and I like things. I like. I really love travel writing, and I really like historical writing. That seems like a great combination of the two. We also have Neil Hansen, The Dreadful Judgment, and this is the story of the Great Fire of London in 1666, September, following a 10-month drought, when London burned. This one, Highwayman. I read a biography of Dick Turpin, maybe the end of last year, because my sister, who is heavily into family history, told me that we are loosely related to Dick Turpin. In fact, on my maternal side, way back, they married Dick Turpin's brother. That's the connection. Anyway, he wasn't a nice man. But I have another Highwayman book here. This is Stand and Deliver, A History of Highway Robbery by David Brandon. I also have this, Stacy Schiff's very famous book, The Witches, about Salem in 1692. This is one of the top contenders for my first reads, I think. I really want to read this in the next 3 months. That's high up the list of this pile of possibilities. As actually is this, Mark Galotti, A Short History of Russia. Now, it's not huge. It's not going to go into incredible detail, but one of the reasons I want to read it is because I have two books by Orlando Figes, Natasha's Dance, which is a cultural history of Russia, and The People's Tragedy, which is about the Russian Revolution, which I plan to read later in the year, and I thought this would probably be a good precursor to that. Then I have The Gates of Europe, A History of Ukraine, by Serhiy Plokhy. Obviously, Ukraine continues to be in the news. Basically, it's been bombed to smithereens. And I want to know a bit more about the relationship between Ukraine and Russia. Now, I read Les Miserables earlier this year. Absolutely loved it. So, thought I would learn some more about revolution in France. Found this in a charity shop for 50p. Revolution and Terror in France, 1789 to 95. And this is by D.G. Wright. And talking about revolution, I also have this. Now, I've had this for a while. I did buy it new. It's got one of those hideous stickers that you can't peel off that I hate. The Restless Republic by Anne Key. When I was studying history at school, for English history, we learnt about the Romans and the Vikings, etc., etc. We also learnt about the Tudors, and then we stopped. And we jumped to, the course I did was 20th century political history, which I loved, I found fascinating, but there's this great gap in time that I know very little about. So, in 1649, Britain had a revolution, and Charles I was executed for treason. And over the next decade, the United Kingdom didn't have a king. Oliver Cromwell took power. This is about that decade. This is about the only decade in history that Britain hasn't had a king or a queen, a monarch. A monarch is what I'm trying to say. So, I really want to read that. Now, there's some more general ones here as well. I've got another book on Russia, another precursor, The Modernization of Russia, 1676 to 1825, and this is by Simon Dixon. I have this, which I thought would be quite interesting. Again, it's quite big. This is by Norman Davis. It's called Vanished Kingdoms, and it's the history of half-forgotten Europe, it says. It discusses the kingdoms that have been and gone, and have been replaced by countries. So we are talking about Burgundia, Aragon, Borussia, Sabaudia, Galicia, Etruria, Rosenau, Zanagora, and the Ultimate Vanishing Act, it says, is the last series, and that is the Soviet Union. I then have some more specific books. This looks quite interesting. This is called Daughters of Britannia. It's by Katie Hickman, who actually was the daughter of diplomats. And this is about the life and times of diplomatic wives. And we start, again, it doesn't just go through the time period for Q3, but it's close enough. It's close enough. And it better fits in here than anywhere else. So we go through the 17th and 18th century. We also go through the 19th century. And we start with the Countess of Winchelsea in Constantinople in 1661. Um, and we go all the way through to Susie Tucker in Slovakia in 1995. Maybe this is another one I could add to the two. Mind you, it's pretty short. I can read that in less than 6 months. Then we have a couple of our. I started this last year for the same time period, didn't get around to finishing it. Arabella, England's Lost Queen. Arabella was the granddaughter of Bess of Hardwick, who was the second most important woman in England in Elizabethan times, second only to Elizabeth. Um, and I think that Arabella at one point was destined to, or was being primed to succeed Elizabeth I. She didn't. We didn't have a Queen Arabella. This might tell me why. And then we also have this book. It's called The Ordeal of Elizabeth March, and it's by Linda Colley. And it says, conceived in Jamaica and possibly mixed race, Elizabeth Marsh, 1735 to 1785, travelled further across the globe than the vast majority of men. She spent time in London, Menorca, Marrakesh, Rio de Janeiro, the Cape of Africa, and Dakar. She speculated in Florida, carried out explorations by sea and land, was caught up in the 7 Years' War. Um, and this is her story, and it sounds fascinating. She sounds like a bit of an adventuress. So I may or may not get round to that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. There's 18 books there, and some of those are chunkers. But that's not all, because I have some other ones on ebook and specific ones. I have a couple by Alison Wear. I have The Six Wives of Henry VIII, and I have Elizabeth the Queen. In addition, I have some general things. So I have A History of Budapest by Victor. Oh, I've lost him. Victor Sebastian. And that's like 2,000 years of Central European history. And then I have another book about Ukraine, The Forging of a Nation. This is by Yaroslav Hritzak, and it's translated by Dominic Hoffman. I have something that sounds quite interesting here, and it says it's a mind-boggling history of the earliest books. It's called Papyrus. It's about. It's by Irene Vallejo. The story of Scandinavia, from the Vikings to social democracy. This is by Stein Ringen. I have a couple by Christopher Hibbert. I have The Rise and Fall of the House of Medici, and I also have a book on the French Revolution. I'm midway through this at the moment, The Basque History of the World. It's fascinating. And this is by Mark Kolansky. And then I have Alexander Mikaberetsi's The Burning of Moscow, 1812. Because we are tying in with Jane Austen, I also have Jane Austen, A Life, which will double up as my read for Jane Austen July. So that's definitely one for next month. And then I don't know where I find all these things from. Now, bear in mind, I'm an absolute cheapskate. So They must have been reduced somewhere because I don't pay loads and loads of money for things. Anyway, this is called Black Loyalists, and it's by Ruth Holmes Whitehead, and it says it's the southern settlers of Nova Scotia's first free black communities. And I just thought it looked really good, so might give that a go. Those are those are those. I think that's it. I've got a couple more kicking about. Um, this is far more worldly than my usual list of possibilities, which I've noticed have tended to be very British centric. So I'm trying to expand further afield. I do appreciate that the majority of these are about Europe, but I mean we've got Salem in there. We've got the two books about the Native Americans and the history of the American West. So I think those are the only ones that get me out of this continent, apart from the speeches in the book of reportage, which sort of dips in and out everywhere. Anyway, that's it. This is my pile of possibilities for Q3. Next week, I shall tell you what I read for Q2. There's so many brilliant book events during the summer. I'm not sure how I'm going to fit everything in, but it's going to be fun trying. Thank you for popping by. Let me know what you're reading if you're taking part in Historathon. If you're not taking part in Historathon, why aren't you taking part in Historathon? It's great. I'll list all the information down below, like I say. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And I will speak to you again very soon. Thank you for popping by. Bye for now.